Nobody told me that within hours of giving birth, when I am exhausted, emotional, and trying to figure out how to take care of a newborn child, I was going to be asked some of the most important questions of my life. So today I'm going to walk you through some of the decisions that you are going to have to make within the first 48 hours of giving birth, not to scare you, but to help you think about it ahead of time so that you have all of these decisions made, you know what to expect, so that you don't have to kind of freak out in the moment. Now, my goal is not to tell you what to do. I don't even have to tell you what I did. My goal is to present the information to you because these decisions were kind of like shocking to me, some of them. Some of them I was not prepared for. And I want you to know what the choices are. I want you to know what decisions you're going to have to make. So you have time. You can go research them. You can figure out what best suits your family so that you can make the decision yourself. If you're still in that stage of trying to figure out what type of birth you have, or maybe you want some positive birth stories to hear, I will link both of my birth stories below for you to check out. I had a very positive in-hospital birth experience with my firstborn, and then I had a very positive home birth with my second. So both of those stories are linked below for you. One of the first things that you're going to have to decide is vitamin K shot. Now, typically this is administered in a shot given within the first 24 hours of life, and it is vitamin K. The reason behind this is that there's something called VKDB, vitamin K deficiency bleeding, that is pretty rare, but what it is because babies are so naturally low in vitamin K, every so often a baby will have internal bleeding, and it's really hard to detect, and it is deadly. So they give this vitamin K shot to all babies to prevent that risk from happening. Now, there are tons of people on the spectrum. Some people completely deny it, say that vitamin K is low in babies for a reason, God made us perfect, that kind of deal. There are people who refuse the vitamin K shot but go with an alternative and get like a vitamin K oral medicine to give to their babies, which also has very high success rates when taken correctly. And then there are people who obviously go forth and get the regular vitamin K shot as recommended by Midwestern doctors. All of this to tell you, it is probably one of the first decisions you are going to have to make as a new parent is whether or not you want to do the vitamin K shot and how you want to administer the vitamin K. So not being prepared for it can kind of feel overwhelming because you're like, wait, what are you going to do to my baby? Like, you're taking my baby to go put a shot in them? Like, why do we need that? And it's kind of starts that spiral of questions. The next decision that you're going to have to make pretty much immediately is the eye ointment. Now, this is an ointment placed in their eyes to get rid of any infection that could have passed during delivery. Now, if you test negative for any type of infection as a pregnant woman, which all pregnant women are tested for infection, then there's no risk of passing anything to baby. So you really, as long as you tested negative, shouldn't need to do the eye ointment. However, most hospitals will just automatically do it, whether you tested positive or negative. So that's something to consider and think about. It's typically just automatically happen unless you decline. So looking into it, figuring out like, did you test positive? Did you test negative? Your personal, talk to your provider about it if that's a decision that you want to consider. And then that kind of leads to another big topic, which is obviously vaccination. I'm not here to tell you to vaccinate your child or not vaccinate your child, but one of the vaccines that they receive in the first 48 hours of life is the Hep B vaccine. So make sure you know what it is. Make sure you know you've read the inserts and you know what's included in this shot that is going to be given to your child, and have a full understanding rather than just kind of following the status quo, being able to understand and ask questions and have those conversations with your provider ahead of time. Vaccinations, there's many different types of schedules that you can do depending on the provider that you work with, and obviously you can decline it or go forth with it, but that is a decision that is going to be made very, very shortly after giving birth. And oh my gosh, like, you're so sleep deprived, like you're like, what? Like, what's going on? I think that was like a huge one where I was like, like just so confused because I was so disoriented and was like, wait, why? They're already getting a vaccine? Like, what's going on? So, yeah, that one took me by surprise. Some of these are kind of like overlapped with birth, but we're going to talk about it in the first 48 hours. Cord clamping. Obviously, this is a part of like the birth process, but cord clamping is that process of actually clamping the cord, stopping the flow of anything going through the umbilical cord, and then obviously cutting the umbilical cord. Now, there are a lot of different beliefs about this. A lot of like traditional hospitals will just kind of, as soon as the baby comes out, clamp the cord, cut it very shortly after. However, some people believe that the cord needs to be completely transparent. All of the blood, all of the nutrients have flowed through from the placenta to the baby. So you're supposed to kind of delay it and let that process happen. We personally did choose to delay cord clamping, and I think it was like 45 minutes later, I actually delivered the placenta. It stayed attached to my baby, and then we eventually, once it was completely clear and we kind of remembered, oh, like, okay, let's do it now, we clamped it and cut it. So that's something to talk about. A lot of hospitals will have policies for how long they can let you wait. It can be as short. I think for my daughter, when we were in a hospital, it was like 5 minutes before we were like, okay, like we have to, cut the cord now, which is kind of interesting in my opinion. But all this to say, you can research the benefits of delaying cord clamping and make that decision yourself and have that conversation with your provider. This is probably the most shocking thing that I have come to understand as a parent. When we were pregnant with my daughter, we didn't know what we were having, if we were having a boy or a girl. And I remember making my birth plan, and I wanted to have an unmedicated birth, and I was sharing on social media everything. And I remember putting in there, if the baby is a boy, they will be circumcised. Like, that's kind of what happens where we live in the United States. Like, that's very typical. And I didn't question it. And I put my birth plan up, and people were like looking at it, and some of the moms were like, wow, I'm surprised. Like, you're a very like natural minded mom. I'm surprised that you are going to circumcise your son. And I was like, oh, truthfully, I didn't even think not to. And that's kind of what became this inner voice, because I was like, oh, I just went with it. And I'm so glad that someone pointed that out, because it kind of brought that, that questioning part of me alive. Like, now, instead of just going with what is normal, I kind of question everything, and it has led me to some really good decisions with my kids. And that was kind of the starting point. So all that to say, yes, circumcision, you do need to decide that. That happens in hospital within the first 48 hours. It started as a religious belief. People were Christian and believed that this is the way to do it, to stay clean. And then it kind of built this reputation of it's more sanitary to do it, but there are no studies proving that. It's actually kind of the opposite. There's a lot of benefits to leaving the foreskin attached. So I don't know. Once we researched it, we decided not to opt for circumcision, but either way, research it, learn about it. It's a big deal. I feel like you kind of just send your baby off to go get this surgery, this actual removal of a body part, and we don't really even think about it as parents sometimes. Or I wasn't planning on it. I was kind of oh, okay, that is something I want to consider and think about. So hopefully you get that as we're talking about things. I'm not trying to say this is the right way, but my mind was boggled by some of these things. And if you're a type of mom that questions things and wants to feel prepared and wants to lay out their options and figure out what's right for your family, that's what I hope you're getting from this. So definitely look into circumcision, especially if you're not finding out the gender. Make sure you're prepared either way. After your baby is born, especially if you're in a hospital, they will suggest a newborn bath. And again, this is a big variety of beliefs about it, but when your baby is born, they have vernix all over them, which is that white stuff, and it is so good for them. It's good for their skin. It's good for their to protect. It's an extra layer of protection to protect their microbiome, all of those good germs that they need on them to protect them, especially if they're in a hospital. Their first bath will definitely clean that off. It'll clean the blood off. It will make them look adorable. But truthfully, we didn't do a newborn bath for either of my babies, and within, I don't know, 10 hours, that naturally soaked in, and they didn't look like they had anything on them. They looked clean as can be, but they got all the benefits of being able to absorb that into their skin. That being said, that's an option. Obviously, you can decline the baby's bath. We did not bathe my son for 2 weeks. Like, they're not getting dirty. I'm wiping their butt when they're going to the bathroom. Like, you don't need to give a baby a bath. It's a lot less than you would actually think, and it's good for them. It's good for their skin to have those natural oils, to have that vernix on them. That being said, if you do decide to give a baby a bath in the hospital, you want them clean, you're just not into that, that's fine. There's also other things to consider, like what type of product you're using. They might not choose something that's free of fragrance or free of phthalates and parabens, or a long list of other things that you might not want on a newborn skin. So whether you are going to do a baby bath or you're not going to do a baby bath, kind of make that decision. But also, if you do opt for the baby bath, like what kind of products you want used, if you want to be involved in it, if your husband wants to be involved in it, if you want the nurse to do it, they'll do the bath right there and do everything themselves. So those are just some decisions to think about as well. Some other things that happen pretty quickly after birth is the blood spot screening that checks for like genetic defects within the blood, the hearing screening, and a heart screening. So all of those happen. You can look into all of them. Pretty standard for home births and hospital births. But again, like the more questions we ask as parents, the better. Knowing what's going to happen, what it's going to look like, can kind of like prepare you for what's going to happen and what it's going to look like. So I just felt like the more prepared I was, the better. So most of this video has been very much focused on like the nitty-gritty medical stuff, but there also is other things that you're going to want to consider, especially like you'll be shocked at some of the things that happen right after you give birth to a baby. Like visitors. I hear a lot of people talk about visitors, like you can decline them, but you can also embrace them. We, after giving birth to my son, wanted grandma and grandpa to come over. We wanted granny and papa to come over. Like, we were so excited about this birth of our baby. We wanted to show them to everybody. So making that decision, do you want visitors? When do you want them? You can change your mind too. Like, you can say no visitors for a week, and then maybe after a couple days, you're totally ready for them. But at least you've kind of considered, you've had that conversation. Another thing is like an announcement text, having like your husband ready with like, here's what to include in it, here's who to send it to, so you don't forget about anybody. Like, when you are exhausted, and your husband's gonna be like overwhelmed and exhausted too, you might forget to text like your brother. Like, you might text everybody and be like, oh shoot, I forgot to text them. So having like a list and being prepared for that in addition to visitors will be helpful. And obviously how you're going to feed baby. I think this is one of the most important things to become very educated on. As a breastfeeding mom, I can testify to that it is not as common sense as you would think. Like, I thought I got it. I put my baby on, she latched, she was suckling. I was like, this was great. We got this. So natural. And like, the nurse came in and was like, oh honey, and like fixed so many things for me. And I was like, wow, like I wish I would have known that, because even just something like that would have helped so much with my breastfeeding journey. But then also, like, you know, have considerations. If something goes wrong and I need formula, what type of formula am I going to use? Do I want to go formula? Are there other methods of feeding my baby before I switch to formula? So many of these things I didn't know. And when my daughter was born, they were like, she's not gaining enough weight, we need to switch to formula. And I didn't want to. I was like, no, I'm breastfeeding. Like, stop trying to force formula on me. Give me something else. And they did. They gave me like a syringe, and I was able to syringe feed her my own breast milk that I hand expressed. And we also did a spoon method. And I was really proud of myself for doing that. But that is because I educated myself and I knew the different types of feeding techniques. I knew obviously breastfeeding, formula feeding, bottle feeding. I like kind of like went into all of these different methods and like got a basic understanding. I'm not saying we need to be experts, but enough where I felt comfortable being like, my baby looks healthy and I feel confident that this breastfeeding is going to work. Like, make this happen for me. Becoming a parent is like honestly becoming a research expert. Like, these are just the beginning questions that you're going to have, these beginning decisions that you're going to have to make. And I think that they are so important, and preparing ahead of time for them is going to make it so much easier when you are sleep deprived and exhausted. But I promise you, it's not going to end here. Like, there are going to be so many things that you're going to be questioning and researching and figuring out as you go along as a parent. And that's what being a parent is. But I'm just trying to make it a little bit easier for you during those first 48 hours where you are just utterly exhausted. And I want you to be able to focus on your baby. I want you to be able to truly like form that bond and that attachment, and not have to be worried about all these like decisions that nobody freaking talks about. And if you think that the decisions start after baby arrives, wait for my next video. We are going to be talking about all of the decisions that you have to make while you are in labor, or might have to make while you're in labor. Everything from like pain management, induction, Pitocin, breaking your water, all of that good stuff we're going to dive into. So make sure to subscribe to my channel if you're not already a subscriber, and check back next week for my next video. If this video was helpful, please give it a thumbs up and let me know in the comments. I love hearing from you guys, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.